All right, this is how your outline for your last page of notes should look like. So go ahead and start writing this down in your notebook. You should have the trapezoid right next to the isosceles trapezoid so that you can compare those two. A trapezoid only has two properties, an isosceles trapezoid has those two properties plus a few more. So it gets up to 7 properties. You need to save some space for a drawing for each one of those. And then you also need to have a spot for kite. So we're going to go over a kite as well, and its 6 properties and a drawing for it as well. So take a second, pause the video, go ahead and set up these notes for today. All right, we are going to go ahead and start on the trapezoid. You can write these two properties down. The sum of all the angles is 360. If you notice, every single one of these quadrilaterals, which means it has 4 sides, every single one of these quadrilaterals has its angles adding up to 360, which makes sense because that's the case for every quadrilateral in the world. All the angles add up to 360. Okay? And the last thing, the second property is that the bases are parallel. So if you can look at this drawing here, you can see that the only thing we know about this trapezoid is that the top and the bottom, which are the bases, are parallel. The other two sides are not parallel. They're going to intersect each other somewhere if they were extended, okay? So make sure you understand that only the bases are parallel. All right, and then an isosceles trapezoid, you can go ahead and write down those same two properties to start, that the sum of all the angles is 360 and that the bases are parallel, although she has them in a different order here. So number 2 is that the legs, which are not the bases, there's legs and bases, okay? The legs are congruent to each other in an isosceles trapezoid. The bases are parallel, which we said in the last one as well. Lower base angles are congruent, upper base angles are congruent, and the diagonals are congruent, and any lower base angle is supplementary to any upper base angle. So let's look at number 4. Lower base angles are congruent. So if you look at the picture here, this is a lower base angle, and this is the other lower base angle, because here's the lower base, and these two angles are congruent to each other. Okay? Upper base angles are congruent. That's number 5. Here's the upper base. Its angle here and angle over here are congruent as well. Okay? The diagonals are congruent, and the number 7, any lower base angle is supplementary to an upper base angle. So this lower base angle plus this upper base angle adds up to 180. Okay, and the same over here, and the same across. So a lower base angle plus an upper base angle equals 180 together. All right, you can compare an isosceles trapezoid to a regular trapezoid now that you have them lined up next to each other. All right, and the last thing is a kite. So you can go ahead and take notes on these 6 properties of a kite, and there's the drawing down below. The sum of all the angles of a kite is 360, just like every quadrilateral. 2 disjoint pairs of consecutive sides are congruent. Okay, so that means the 2 sides here, this one consecutive with this one up top, those are going to be congruent to each other, and then these 2 longer ones consecutive next to each other are also going to be congruent to each other. Not all 4 of them are congruent, just the 2 on the top and then the 2 on the bottom are congruent to each other. Skip number 3, because that is said later, I think. The diagonals are perpendicular is number 4. Okay, so you can see that in the picture here with the 90-degree angle between the 2 diagonals. One of the diagonals bisects a pair of opposite angles, okay? So that means that you see how this diagonal up and down, the vertical diagonal, bisects this angle up here. It makes it the same on both sides, and it bisects this angle down here. It makes it the same on both sides, okay? That's what that means. That's what number 5 means. And then number 6, one pair of opposite angles are congruent, okay? That means that this side over here, the left, is congruent to the entire right side. Those are congruent to each other. So when it's broken down, this bottom angle is congruent with this bottom angle, and this top angle is congruent with this top angle over here. Okay, so that's a lot of properties for a kite, and a lot of properties for a lot of different quadrilaterals today. The best way to get better at this is to do the homework and make sure you understand the properties in action, okay, in real life. So when we do the homework tomorrow, make sure to have these notes with you.